Look closely. Can you see what's strange about this video? Something absolutely unique is happening here, and it's being documented for posterity. I'm replaying Sonic Adventure, a game that came out in 1999. It's one of my absolute favourite games of the era. One of the main attractions is the ability to play as Sonic in free-roaming adventure stages as you manipulate your way through complex courses that require quick bursts of speed and quick reflexes to avoid enemies. And there, in the red circle, dotting in and out of focus, is my wife. She's playing as Tails. Now, when Sonic the Hedgehog moved into 3 dimensions, it gained many things, but one thing I will always regret is the loss of a competent, collaborative 2-player mode. It always was one of the series' greatest strengths for me, but this first 3D game is one of the last times that the series has allowed a second player to pick up a controller and take charge of Tails. However, in tightly designed 3-dimensional levels, it's very difficult for the second player to remain close enough to the main player to stay on screen. They don't have control of the camera, so they find themselves zipping in and out of the screen, uncertain which direction the keypad corresponds to in any given moment. If they get lost, then Tails will drop back down to rejoin Sonic, but this can only happen if the main player stops and waits. It just isn't possible to pick up and play if the first player is travelling at full speed. There is a reason the franchise abandoned this mode of drop-in multiplayer from this moment onwards, and it's a shame. Collaborative multiplayer had been a staple of the series ever since 1992, and it really is the understated king of the franchise that no other series could compete with. As someone lucky enough to have a Sega Mega Drive in the house when I was young, I was always curious about games available on alternative consoles. Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country, Nintendo's 2 most prevalent platforming franchises, each looked appealing, but I was always confused why they were so difficult to play together. Sure, these games do have 2-player modes, but the system is designed for alternate play. Each gamer picking up their controller one at a time, swapping after the other either completes a level or loses a life. On reflection, given how taxing running these games were for the weak hardware available at the time, this is not surprising, but it still left a sour taste in my mouth, because there were a wealth of games on the Sega Genesis that showed the benefits of collaborative play. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was a sequel like no other. It took what had worked in the original game, a unique engine that used responsive momentum-based physics to enable incredible speed-based level design, and extrapolated. The levels in Sonic 2 are larger, but they are also more designed for speed, most of them regularly interspersed with linear pathways that resemble stretches of roller coaster design. The colours are brighter and they're more striking. The music is a tad faster and even more iconic. Everything is ramped up a gear. But the innovation that I will always adore Sonic 2 for is its approach to multiplayer. To the average layman, you would assume the way to play it is listed there on this title screen. 2-player mode, where 2 people can race competitively through 4 of the game's levels with a split screen down the horizontal middle, challenging each other for who can combine the fastest time with the most points gained, rings collected and enemies killed. This is a fun diversion, a way to lay down a challenge as to who is the best. It's an optional extra, one I'm glad they put in, but no, the way to enjoy multiplayer Sonic 2 is there in the main game in the form of Tails. Playing alone, Tails will follow Sonic through the game. An AI script controls him as he runs, jumps and leaps behind Sonic, just a tad slowly. If he does get left behind though, he spins his tails and he flies to your location. He reappears with no game immersion breaking leaps or jumps or flashes where he just snaps to. It's all done seamlessly and through the world building idea that he can fly by spinning his tails together. However, by picking up a second controller, player 2 can take command of the little fox and instantly the game transforms. The game is now a race. The camera focused on the first player, but Tails is never far behind. In this mode, Tails cannot open item boxes or spin end of level spinners, but that is about the only restriction on him. He can collect rings, he can defeat enemies, bounce off spinners, activate pinball flippers. The game makes a brilliant sport comparing the collaborative rivalry between players 1 and 2. One of them is in command, the camera is affixed to them, but the other has near invincibility and a dogged determination to catch up. What is done is completely within the player's hands. You can join them on this spirit of adventure and work together to bring down the bosses faster, or you can play mean and try to outmaneuver each other for the glory. Player 1 can try to keep moving to prevent Tails from ever landing. But on the flip side, due to the brief cooldown each boss has after being hit, before you can attack again, Tails can absolutely wreck Sonic by making him pass through bosses and causing him to fall to his death into bottomless pits of lava that he should never have gotten near in the first place. Tails got a lot of flack back in the day for being an annoyance to the pure pursuit of speedrunning, but importantly, he's an optional extra. It is possible to play without him by selecting that option in the game's menu on the title screen. Furthermore, he brings the first real instance of in-game storytelling to the franchise, piloting the Tornado biplane through the Sky Chase mode, being shot down and forced to abandon you aboard the Wing Fortress before repairing it, flying back up to the skies to help and indeed save you at the conclusion of this epic adventure. Sonic 2 is not the first cooperative multiplayer game, I'm not claiming that. Arcade titles had been doing this for years, dating back to Joust in 1982 and before. However, many earlier cooperative multiplayer games had fixed screens with no scrolling, or if they did have scrolling, it was a limited move from a combat arena to combat arena, a concept seen in games like Streets of Rage, Golden Axe or Battletoads. Even then, few games encourage completely open two-player exploration. From my research, the earliest examples of games that tried this approach were Quartet on the arcades, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers on the NES, and the isometric Snake Rattle and Roll by Rare. In all of these, the collaborative gameplay occurs in the same playing space, no split screen issues isolating the two players, and they have an arcade-like lives mentality. That means each player has a set life counter before the game returns to a single player experience. There has always been a tension between games as a single user experience or multiplayer games, and Sonic 2 breached this divide magnificently. By making Tails functionally immortal, he in effect becomes an easy mode. By allowing two people to enjoy comparatively equal gameplay simultaneously, they enabled a generation of friends or siblings to not just hand over the controller and have a go, but sit next to each other and share in the majesty of one of the most thrilling games available at the time. The concept was expanded upon in the sequel, Sonic 3, where Tails gained new powers to make him slightly more distinct to Sonic, and so the template was set, at least until the realities of 3D game design proved that it just wasn't worth it. I tried to get the same experience out of the trial mode of Sonic Adventure we had back on the Mega Drive, but the magic just could not be recaptured. Interestingly, and perhaps very obvious now with years hindsight, is the comparison between the almost seamless integration of Tails into the main adventure to make it a multiplayer friendly experience, comparing this to the downgrading graphics that occur when you're running the split screen true two-player mode. In this mode, with a horizontal line across the screen, the game runs in interlaced 2 mode, which allows the system to output its graphics in a 320 by 448 image by alternating between even and odd lines every second. Normally, Mega Drive games attempted to update the screen at 60 Hz, unless you were living in a PAL region. However, as the console was only updating the upper or lower half of the image each frame, this means the two-player mode has effectively half the frame rate. This impairment of the graphics is especially noticeable if you get a shield where each line is now only updated every other frame, leading to a striped appearance on the screen. Sonic Team themselves seemed unhappy with this approach as, for the sequels, they reverted to a progressive scan approach where both screens were updated simultaneously, and they designed sprites specifically to cope with the lower resolution. Either way, as fun as the Grand Prix style competitive racing mode was, its appeal, to me, was limited compared to the main campaign. And Nintendo caught on, and the very next Kirby game on the SNES had a helper mode where a second player could take on one of the creatures swallowed by Kirby. The mechanic would not reach the core Mario franchise until 2009, however, when New Super Mario Wii allowed for up to 4 players to simultaneously take on either Mario, Luigi or 2 Toads through each of the levels. For me, one of the best implementations were the Rayman games that followed, that offered seamless drop-in, drop-out multiplayer, and perhaps aping the competitive aspect that the Sonic Tails rivalry always implied, it allowed the players to slap each other around within the levels. And I can't not mention that the same year that Sonic 2 came out, Sega AM7 released World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and Sega also released Tailspin. Both of these were multiplayer platformers which offered optional collaborative interaction between 2 players and could be either both a single or a double player platformer. This game signposted the Mega Drive as one of the best places for collaborative play. People often say that the arrival of Sonic was the first time a competitor company ever really challenged Mario's dominance, but how many of them look at the difference between what Sega was doing on the Mega Drive, and then curiously how the next Nintendo console had 4 controller inputs, and boasted a slew of the most famous multiplayer titles in history. There's never been a direct link, but I wonder